Well, I can tell you a lot of people just didn't want the Astros in the playoffs this year. Well, you got your wish. But what about 2026?
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB and a Locked On MLB crossover with Locked On Astros. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan, the host of Locked On MLB, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Say it with me, the number one sports podcasting network out there. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets all season long. As I mentioned before, I am doing a crossover today. I am not flying solo. And coming with me, friend of the show from before we were even a video podcast, it's the original H-Town Wheelhouse. Do not accept any duplicates. It's Brett Chancey. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm doing good, Sully. It's good to see you. It's good to talk to you. It has been a little too long.
Yeah, it has been.
It's been a while. And you know, the way this season ended, it's the first time as a Locked On host that I have not been able to talk about my team in the playoffs. Last year was a bit abbreviated.
Yeah, it was blink and you miss it.
Oh, yes. And let me tell you, but watching the World Series this year, and I hope Astros fans don't get mad at me for this, I actually kind of enjoyed just watching baseball and enjoying it without having something on the line with my heart or my head while watching the game. It was just kind of fun.
I'll say this was one of, and I said after the World Series, I said, I'm going to have to, people are quick to say, where does this rank? I said, I got to give it a little bit of distance. I got to give it a little bit of chance to let it soak in. But that last game was one of the best games I ever saw in my life, just in terms of any game where you get to a point where either team can win on one swing of the bat is an all-time great World Series game. You know, I saw that several times in my life. You know, the Marlins Indians game 7, the Cubs Indians game 7. The Indians keep falling into this. The Giants Royals, the winning run came to the plate. You know, that there's some great series, and of course the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Yankees in the 9/11 World Series. The best World Series I ever saw in my life, and one that I almost was crying at the end because I didn't want it to end, was when I was a sophomore in college and the Braves and the Twins played in the 1991 World Series, where there was only one clunker in that whole series. The whole series was amazing. Walk-offs, great plays at the plate, great defense, decoy plays. You know, Jack Morris' pitch count was get out of my face. You know, you had walk-off homers. You had sack bunts that turned weird. You know, it was an unlikely heroes. You know, Jerry Willard and Mark Lemke and Gene Larkin all coming up huge in that World Series. It was just a great, but in this one, I made the point. You had the 18-inning game on for Game 3, and I'm here in LA trying to. I have a job to go to, and had to wait. It was late here, and there were people after say, "Was that the greatest World Series game ever played?" And by the end, you can say that wasn't even the best game played that week. I mean, things like the ball getting stuck under the fence, the throw, the double play to end. Double plays ending Game 6 and 7 with the World Series run on base both times. It was really remarkable. And there, you're right. There is something to be said when you can just enjoy, like that Cardinals Rangers game where the Rangers kept being on the verge of winning. That when you don't have an animal in the fight there, it's you can sometimes just enjoy the beauty of the game, and that's what we got this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yamamoto,
worth every penny.
I mean, these guys went out there, and there were a lot of people in Houston rooting for the Blue Jays. I mean, obviously with the ties of George Springer and Miles Straw, Loperfido, those guys, and of course, I don't know that the Astros fans will ever really root for the Dodgers, for good reason. But
I can say, living in LA, no one here is going to be rooting for the Astros.
That's
And the Red Sox cheated too in 2018. As a Red Sox fan, I got it. I can't throw stones in that glass house. So I'm just gonna congratulate them for their Dusty Baker World Series.
Well, Sully, I will tell you this. I actually started kind of a side job last May. I work at Lids in our local mall and sell hats. Kind of enjoy doing that. Get to talk about sports all the time.
Yeah,
and I've met 3 couples that have come into our store that are coming. They had come back to Houston to visit, and no lie, the wife in every case was from LA. The husband was from Houston. And they were together. 2 of the 3 couples met in Vegas where they now work. But I met all these couples that are Astros and Dodgers fans together. And I'm like, wow, a house divided. And they're like, oh, we have to talk with it. And you know what? It's all about being a fan. It's all about rooting. And I know Astros fans are hoping that the Astros can get back into the playoff mix.
Well, and the Astros missed the playoffs this year. And they were I think they had the same record as Detroit, or at least
Yes.
maybe, yeah. And it just was a tiebreaker. So it wasn't as if the Astros had a complete collapse this year. No. I mean, keep in mind the Tigers were a few outs away from going to the American League Championship Series in that brilliant and another great game. That game 5 between Texas and not Texas, Detroit and Seattle. But remember, and I know you know this, on September 17th, with 11 games to go, the Astros were in first place by themselves. Yeah. With 11 games to play and hosting Seattle. Now that series started tied because the Astros had an off day on that Thursday and Seattle won. So the 2 teams showed up tied. And in Houston, and the Astros went on to lose 7 of their next 8 games. It was something ridiculous.
Oh, it was bad. It was
they got swept. They nearly got swept by the A's. I mean, in Sacramento, and it was just a disaster. It was an absolute disaster.
Tell you, there was the weeping and gnashing of teeth in Houston, and suddenly the most celebrated owner and the most successful owner in Astros history was being dubbed as cheap, and he didn't do enough, and we didn't do this at the deadline. And I'm like, but we literally sustained the most injuries that
unbelievable amount of injuries in
Major League history.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, think about this for a second. There were years growing up where a team would have between 12 to 18 pitchers pitch all year. You had your 10, your 5 starters, your 5 relievers, and maybe there was a trade in the middle of the year, or maybe an injury would bring up a pitcher or 2. I mean, I remember the Red Sox sometimes would have 16 pitchers pitch all year for the team. And that would include the September call-up. So it would include the inevitable Jeff Sellers or Mike Brown being called up from Pawtucket. Yeah, I'm going heavy my Red Sox references. 36 pitchers pitched for the Astros this year. 36. And that included Framber Valdez, who pitched 192 innings, had a fine season. Included Hunter Brown, who pitched 185, I think was an all-star this year. But 36 pitchers. I mean, that's unbelievable.
And I mean, there were guys that showed up on the mound and people were like, who's here today?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? And, that was really, I mean, look, for them to be 1 win away from the playoffs, Dana Brown, Joe Espada, they had to do something, and they figured out some things. They had the Bennett Sosas come up. They had different guys, but we even had, Josh Hader went down. Josh Hader was perfect at one point in the year, and then he went down with an injury, and it was just one after the other. And literally the running joke was, when you wake up, what injury report are you going to get on your phone?
Okay, when we come back, before we come back, I got to ask Brett Chancey, do you know who John Rooney is?
That's not the prince. Is that the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
It very well may be. He pitched 1 1/3 innings
That's
this
right.
year for
Yeah.
the Houston Astros this year. He pitched one. He has one more, and bless him, he made it to the major leagues. I am not trashing the guy. He pitched. He can tell his great grandchildren he pitched in the major leagues for one game on August 24th, and it was a 3-2 loss to the Baltimore Orioles, and he let up a home run. He did not get the decision. But there you go. If you could have identified John Rooney, then there you go. But when we come back, we could talk a little bit about what the Astros can do to get back to the playoffs. And I don't think they're that far. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at Game Time. Now, let me tell you something. The World Cup is coming to North America. It's coming here to California. I know it's going to be at the SoFi Stadium. Is that what it's called? Where the Rams and the Chargers play?
Yes.
It's okay. I know it's not the Coliseum, and I know they're going to be playing up in that miserable new park, Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, which is to stadiums what Cats was to musicals. But they got 48 teams for the first time ever, and it's going to be massive. For the first time since the 1994 baseball players strike, we got the World Cup here in America. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part, especially if you're going to go to that hellhole in Santa Clara. That's why Game Time app. Why is Santa Clara getting? Santa Clara's a lovely city. That stadium stinks. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it's going to make going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout makes it really simple to scroll through the matchups and compare seat views. You go to a game, tap a section, boom, you have your tickets within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. You get the seat view feature. It's a game changer. I did this for getting Dodger playoff tickets this year. I saw the 3 home runs by Shohei Ohtani in the 6 shutout innings. Same game, same dude. You literally can see what the pitch looks like from the exact seat before you buy it. Like, I don't know about that one. Prices, including they include the fees, the upfront, no hidden fees, no surprises. And alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab those tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, event with a Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I got to tell you, terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. A flawless live read. Absolutely flawless.
Hey, you know what? I do love Game Time. The thing I like about it is I can literally walk. I can be walking up to the stadium, up to Dyken Park, and I can be purchasing the ticket. Literally purchase the ticket.
To where?
Dyken Park. It's no longer Minute Maid. It's Dyken Park.
Okay.
Dyken Park, yes. Whose world headquarters for HVAC? It's a Japanese air conditioning company, and their world headquarters are right outside Houston. So Minute Maid won it out. So Dyken Park bought the rest of the rights. So there you go.
That's the second worst name for that stadium ever. But after the great Enron. Hey, let's go. Speaking of Enron, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's go do the trivia question, for which I did. We did a Cardinal show the other day, and the trivia was, how did the Cardinals reward superstar and manager Rogers Hornsby when he led the team to their first World Series title in 1926? ICA Tennis says, wasn't Rogers given a Cadillac? I don't recall right off the top of my head. I'll have to look. No, that's not how they rewarded him. But Big John 08865 got it right. He said he was signed a 1-year contract, then promptly traded to the New York baseball giants because the owner didn't want to deal with his nonsense. And I'm glad he clarified it was the baseball giants, and because that would have been a really cruel trade if they traded him to the football team.
That would have been great. I mean, that would have been some serious nonsense they were dealing with.
And it was actually Branch Rickey was running the Cardinals and was locking antlers with Rogers Hornsby, who just led him to the Cardinals' first World Series title. And it was Rickey who traded him to the New York Giants. And there were people burning Rickey's body in effigy, or at least not him literally,
Not him, right?
Yeah, that would have been a bigger story. But the player he got from was Frankie Frisch, who went on to be a Hall of Famer and helped lead the Cardinals to within 2 years they were back in the World Series, and was basically the cornerstone of the Gas House Gang, who won multiple pennants in the 1930s. So in the end, even though Hornsby continued being a brilliant player and later won an MVP for the Cubs, it turned out to be a good trade. So there you go. Sometimes you got to wait.
Maybe he served on some flat sody frost rate back in the day.
That's true. By the way, if you look at Hornsby, he was one of the great hitters of all time, and in 1926 led the Cardinals to the World Series title as a player manager. 27 played for the New York Giants, 28 played for the Boston Braves, and 30 played for the 27 Giants, 28 Braves, 29 Cubs. So in 4 years, he played for 4 different teams. So, and he was still one of the greatest players in each of those years. So He must have been a monumental pain in the ass. But led the Cubs to the 1929 pennant. So there you go. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about a little more recently than the 1929 World Series.
Sure.
The Astros are still, they still were a competitive team. If they won one more game, just one more game, they would have been a wild card team.
Yes.
A bounce here or a bounce there. Anyone who's the owner's chief, this and that, they were a mash unit, and they were one game away from making the playoffs. Would they have gone far? I don't know. The Tigers almost made it to the ALCS. Yeah. So, you don't know. I don't know. What am I going to be? This is not everything everywhere all at once. I can't look at every possibility. But so it's ridiculous, I think, to blame ownership. What was it? Was the ownership Tanyaing everyone's kneecaps all over the place? Right. How many more movie references am I going to throw out here? But we're going into this year, and there is a couple of curious things. They are a little longer in the tooth. That's what happens with older teams. And let's be fair. Framber Valdez is not signed. And
no.
if I'm a team wanting to compete, I know there's lots of people talking Boba shit this and this player that. Framber Valdez is the one pitcher that if I'm on the cusp of contending or on the cusp of winning a series, I'm salivating over Framber Valdez.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's durable. I mean, he's got elite stuff. He has one of the highest ground ball rates in all of baseball. His elite off-speed stuff is there. Now, Framber did have a couple hiccups this year, and he does have a past of having kind of a little bit of a mental breakdown on the mound. And this year, he actually crossed up and threw at one of our catchers, Cesar Salazar, which he blew off. The team blew off, but everybody kind of knew what was happening. And a lot of people say maybe Framber cost himself $30 to $50 million with those shenanigans. Regardless, he is still a pitcher that can give you 190 innings. He can give you upwards of 200 strikeouts. I mean, this guy is going to go out there and compete. I was there at Game 6 in the 2022 World Series when he clinched the game for the Houston Astros. So he's been in pressure situations.
And he should have been the MVP of that World Series. I'm sorry. No offense to Jeremy Pena, who was tremendous.
I agree with that 100%.
And Pena should have been the ALCS MVP. But Valdez, especially against that Philadelphia lineup, the way that those bats were going, game one.
Let me tell you, whenever that home run was hit, Schwarber, that was like I think their first hit of that game,
right?
First base hit that game. We were like, oh my gosh, it's gonna happen, right? Like the Astros are gonna have to go to a Game 7, and I love it. And I think it happened because my son called it. My son said, "Dad, Jordan's coming up to bat this inning. It's gonna be fine. He's going to turn this thing around." What do you know? He hit the 3-run home run. He flipped the game upside down, like he famously called. But This guy right now, from what I hear, the Mets are interested in him. I'm hearing
Yeah.
6 years, 200 million. Look, he's going to go to a contender.
Yep.
I just hope he doesn't go to someone like the Mariners or a division rival, because that would be painful to have to go through.
Yeah. I mean, the Mets are making a lot of moves. And of course, when they made the Nimmo for Marcus Semien deal, there was I heard a lot of people saying that, well, how will this upset the chemistry of the Mets? And I said, the chemistry of the Mets, this team had one of the highest payrolls in baseball history and couldn't outplay the Reds. I mean, I don't care about chemistry when you just had, when, 2 of the last 5 seasons, they've had unbelievable face plants in the final half of the season. And you're talking, well, we don't want to break up the chemistry. Do you want? I'd break up that chemistry right now. I think all the shenanigans with Valdez, I think, are incredibly overrated. I think that he's a fine pitcher. You deal with shenanigans, you deal with this and that. He's someone who's come up big in the World Series and came up big in the playoffs against the Yankees that same year.
Yes.
All the and for Astro fans, again, I'm not bringing up all the trying to put salt in all the old wounds, but to have that second title that you can't say a word about it.
Right.
And you and I locked antlers about a bunch of this stuff about the 2017 title. Nobody can take anything away about what happened in 2022. That was, I mean, it was an earned title and for me, I was rooting for the Astros. Actually, I was rooting for him against the Braves as well, because I love Dusty Baker, and I knew a World Series title for Dusty Baker would basically clinch his Hall of Fame candidacy, which I believe it has. But you take a look at the team, the Walker signing, you didn't have you had a bounce back year from Pena, even though there were some injuries there. Paredes, what's going on with? I mean, is Paredes going to be? What's happening with him?
They're claiming he will be ready for opening day.
Okay.
I doubt. I know that they have recently let go of the head physical trainer, or the doctors. Not all the doctors are still in the building because they have a real issue with return to play protocol, which was actually supposed to be addressed with James Click, but apparently was not. So they kind of clean house there. And look, you mentioned Christian Walker. Yeah, he did still hit 25, 26 home runs.
Yep.
He did still lead the club. He had a better batting average, almost 400 batting average towards the end of the season, for several weeks there. But, going into this next season, you've got a lot of questions. Paredes is the guy. Right now, you've got an infield that's jammed. You've got you've got Paredes, you've got Correa back, which everybody loved. I mean, that was a huge swooning. You got
and it was like they got the band back together. It
was like, oh my gosh, Correa's coming back. We're gonna go to the playoffs. He's gonna light the fire under the guys.
I bought into it.
Old times, right? Well, now you've got all these people. You did unload Mauricio Dubon. You got back Nick Allen, which, whatever. I mean, he is a decent glove, but Dubon's bat wasn't going to play here. Dubon wasn't going to be on the field much, and I think that's why they did it. It was a money-saving play. But now the question is, Jake Myers, he's up. He's up to be traded. Mike Stanton and I on my Backs of Bullpen podcast talk about, I think Jake Myers has more value to the Astros in Houston than he does on the trade market. Right. I think he's worth more to the Astros here, being the center fielder. But the Astros are apparently shopping him around. So going back to Paredes, a lot of clubs want him because his eye, he sees more pitches than just about any batter in Major League Baseball. But he's a guy that you can't let go. He's a guy that you've got to have in this lineup, because when he's right, he was your offensive MVP until he went down.
By the way, Brad, I just want to point something out. On July 6th, I'm not talking about April. On July 6th, the Astros had the second best record in the American League and the third best record in baseball. Do you know who had the best record in baseball on July 6th?
Was it the Detroit Tigers?
It was the Detroit Tigers. And the Astros were only one game back in the loss column.
Yes.
And by the way, the best record in the National League at that point were the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the fourth worst record in the American League belonged to the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, you talk about how after that's after the 4th of July. That's
Yeah.
we're almost at the 2/3 marks of the season at that point. And the Astros were after that were 8 games under 500 the rest of the way. Oh, and by the way, the Cleveland Guardians went 48-26 after that.
Oh, they went on a tear. But
Yeah.
that's what
And as did Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee had the best record in baseball after that as well. So,
but Cleveland does that a lot, Sully.
Yeah.
Cleveland teases their fans. You're going, oh my gosh, they're going to be a giant. They're going to be a monster, and then they disappear.
Yeah. Well, but anyone who's going to try to criticize what the ownership did, I think is missing the boat a little bit. They were a contending team for a giant chunk of the season. Injuries just caught up with them.
Yeah,
now, if they lose, Valdez will be a huge shoes to fill. When we come back, I'm going to bring up the single best thing going for Houston, and it has to do with 2 things: other people's incompetence and the way the continent of the United States and North America were formed. Yes, I know the United States is not a continent. Hey, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching a game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the actions unfold, every drive, every momentum, every swing, every highlight moment. Live betting, mwah! It's in a class A by itself. When the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot and defense tightens up, and the momentum flips over a turnover, FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads, money lines, player props update as the game heats up. You can bet on the next touchdown scores, drive results, who's going to get a safety, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, drive, and every possibility. So, if you're in the middle of the action this season, you got to visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB or Locked On Astros your first listen. Whichever one is your first listen, make the other one your second listen. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is, say it with me, the #1 sports podcasting network. We're with Brett Chancey of Locked On Astros. I'm your pal Sully. Last thing I'm going to talk about. There is one major thing that is going to go in the favor of the Houston Astros. Well, or a couple of things. First of all, obviously the Seattle Mariners had a wonderful season, 90-win season, got within 4. Your boy George Springer decided to pull an Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom and rip out the heart of Seattle fans. But, there have been many instances of teams that have a terrific year and they're going to be great every single year and take a step back. May I present to you the 2023 Baltimore Orioles, who are a 100-some-odd win team, and last year they're firing their manager. If I might present to you Minnesota, who got to the division series a few years ago and now are cleaning house. The idea of a team like Seattle, which obviously looks very good, but a lot of teams look very good moving forward, taking a step back. And you take a look at the other 3 teams in their division. You have the don't tell them where they're playing A's, or as I will insist on calling them this year, the West Sacramento A's, because that's where they freaking play. You have 2 teams that can't even figure out where they play. The Los Angeles Angels play in Orange County. The Oakland Las Vegas A's play in West Sacramento. And the team that should be in Dallas is just because we're just Texas. The Rangers are rebuilding. They're throwing everything. They're dumping players off the side, and it looks like they're going to trade everything that isn't nailed down. And if the A's don't have the worst owner in baseball, the Angels do. So the best thing going for the Astros is their location on the planet, and that they didn't put them in the Central. Their location on the planet Earth, and the fact that 3 of the teams don't really have a bat's chance in hell. Granted, the A's were were a lot better than people thought they were. They were only they're 10 games under 500, but they weren't like a terrible team. And they got the 2 best rookies in baseball, and at least in the American League last year. But there's no way that ownership's going to do anything to improve the team. Do you know why? May I introduce you to John Fisher? And may I also introduce you to Artie Moreno? And then the other team is rebuilding. So really the only team the Astros have to worry about, barring an absolute 1969 Mets miracle, is the Seattle Mariners. And that, I think, is a big advantage for the Houston Astros.
Yeah, I do have to agree with you on that. And that's where, as much as I want the Astros to go out and get someone like a Michael King, a Ranger Suarez, to bring in, the Astros want to bring a starting pitcher in to complement Hunter Brown.
They have to. They have to.
Because, you got Christian Javier coming back. You want a good, solid full season out of him, but you don't know what you're going to get. Spencer Arrighetti, they're hoping to get something out of him. Jason Alexander, who actually we had on Locked on Astros, was a phenomenal, just diamond in the rough for them.
Yeah.
But again, these aren't guys that are your number 2 or number 3 solid guys right now. So Hunter Brown's got to have someone to back him up. And are they going to do that? Because they keep saying they need another starting pitcher. They keep saying they need a left-handed bat. They've been rumored heavily with Brendan Donovan. They keep saying they want another catcher, but they also say in the same breath, well, we don't want to go. We want to stay under the luxury tax threshold. And I'm like, well, you can't have both. It's literally impossible. There's no fuzzy math that you can do to create a scenario where you bring in a Suarez or a King or someone like that. And you can't replace Framber Valdez with one guy. You've got to replace him in the aggregate. That's why they got Pearson. That's why they got Weiss. That's why they are looking at other people to come in. And we also had our Arizona Fall League Player of the Year, James Hicks, on the Back to the Bullpen podcast. And I don't know if he's going to come in and make a difference, but he's suddenly lighting the scoreboard up with zeros. And so it is a weird time, but it is not a horrible time. And I think a lot of Astros fans are buying into the doom and gloom. While I'm not, my line, Sully, is always positive, always Stros. And that's the way we got to keep it right now, because winter meetings are right around the corner.
Well, there you go. Well, look at, and I think it's going to be a bounce back year for the Astros, provided they find some way to make up for some of the innings thrown by Valdez, because losing Valdez would be gigantic. Not sink the ship gigantic, but certainly that'd be a big loss. Okay, hey Brett, tell people where they can listen to your terrific show.
So if you go to Spotify, you go to anywhere you get your podcast, you go to YouTube, check us out. Hey, look, before Mauricio Dubon was traded, we had the 2-time Gold Glover on. We had Jason Alexander on. I mean, we've had Roflo. We've had a whole host of characters. And pretty soon I'll be bringing on Daniel Kim, a KBO insider, to Locked on Astros. So check us out. And make sure that, when you refer to the Rangers, we call them the Rangers of South Oklahoma, because their title sponsor is a casino in South Oklahoma. So it makes sense. But seriously,
shots across the bow. Shots across the bow.
Well, no, seriously, y'all come hang out with us. Eric and I love having y'all. We actually have fans from all over, and we welcome anybody from any team, because why? We love baseball.
Well, let's bring up the trivia question, which is, and please let me keep this on. What reliever threw the clinching pitch for the first postseason series the Astros ever won? Why is it turning off? And later, the first pennant they ever won in their history. What reliever threw the clinching pitch of the first postseason series the Astros ever won in their history, and later the first pennant they ever won in their history? That's a trivia question, and I'm guessing it's harder than you think. I bet you know it. All right, talking about the Astros, who had a better season than you thought, but not the season they won, with Brett Chancey. This has been Locked on MLB, Locked on Astros crossover. I'm yours, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Whoops, wrong button. Sully hit the wrong button.
But he's always right.
I'm glad someone thinks that.